Back to My Garden, episode 31.
Welcome to Back to My Garden. Discover your passion for gardening. Here's Dave Ledoux.
Attention gardeners, do you love perennial flowers? Get a free online catalog and 10% off your first order of bulbs at Bloomin' Bulbs. I set up a link just for podcast listeners. Go to www.backtomygarden.com/bulb for your special bonus. Do you love homegrown tomatoes? Me too. Free report reveals the 5 dirt-cheap tools I use to grow 22 types of heirloom tomatoes, including my secret soil booster. Download your copy for free today at backtomygarden.com/free report. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world when you listen to this. I'm Dave Ledoux, and welcome to another edition of Back to My Garden. Fabulous guest today on our show. Nell Foster is the author of Keep Your Houseplants Alive. And Nell's main website is filled with beautiful gardening photos, tips, and ideas to enlighten and inspire. She believes every gardener deserves to feel as gorgeous as her beloved blossoms. Nell's horticulture career has taken her from snowy Connecticut to sunny Santa Barbara, where you'll find her in her organic, drought-tolerant garden. Nell, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone.
Nell, I want to hear your story, and our listeners want to get to know you. Nell, take a minute or two and just share with us a little bit about your background.
I was born on a small farm in northwestern Connecticut, so I say that I grew up gardening because I was raised on a farm. If you go to my blog, there's a picture of me on a tractor at 2 months old, and I learned how to drive a tractor when I was 10, and my dad's truck when I was 13, and we had a huge vegetable garden because we candlelight. It was probably 100 or 125 feet by about 40 feet. It was a big one, besides flower gardens. And then my dad built a greenhouse, too, because he started all his seeds in there. So my background is purely gardening.
For those of you driving in your car in rush hour traffic, keep both hands on the wheel. Don't be surfing the interwebs on your phone. I will have all the links up to Nell's beautiful site and social media. It's going to be at www.backtomygarden.com/31. Nell's main site, and it's way more than a blog, is www.joyousgarden.com, Joyous Garden, and you can follow Nell, very active on Twitter, at Joyous Garden.
Yes, indeed.
So much to cover. I have notes. Hopefully we'll stick to them because you're very prolific. You have a tremendous gardening career.
I do.
There's always two phases when I get to talk to gardeners. Is some either grew up gardening like you and I did, or they discovered as an adult, and sometimes there's a big gap in between. Mm-hmm. What was gardening like for you as a grown-up when you said, I'm going to grow something?
I lived in New York City and San Francisco for a while when I became an adult, and then of course there's college. And I did work, I actually studied. I started in landscape architecture, and then I switched over to ornamental horticulture. So I worked through college with plants. Actually, I crossed barley. I was working for a professor who was doing experiments with barley to get a strong seed head on a strong plant. So I did that, and I was an herb propagator also. So I've worked with plants, and then in the cities I lived in, I worked more with interior plants because so I have an interior background. And now here in Santa Barbara, where I live, I garden almost every day.
Beautiful.
Because gardening is year round here. It's good and bad. It can be exhausting, but it's beautiful.
You're in beautiful Santa Barbara, California, but that's with its own unique set of challenges, right? You're having a terrible drought.
Oh, we are having an exceptional drought. It's the worst drought in over 100 years. So I'm very glad that my garden is drought tolerant. I tore out all of my lawns when I first moved into this house. So I'm very glad that I had the foresight to do that.
Let's talk just a bit, because we have listeners who are complaining about too much rain this year in the upper Midwest.
Please send some. Please send some.
We understand. I mean, it's a national media conversation, and it affects the price of produce. And
yes, exactly, because we grow so much here.
Talk to us a little bit about the concept of drought tolerant. You ripped out your lawn, which is
I did.
Step one. Does that affect your plant selection and what you put into your garden?
It did. I really got into succulents when I moved down here, and there are so many succulent nurseries and growers, and I also have a lot of, besides succulents, I've got a lot of bromeliads in my garden, which are surprisingly drought tolerant. And I also use plants which I low maintenance, low water. I have a lot of low maintenance plants because I was a professional gardener for 18 years. So I deadheaded and trimmed and pruned for years and years. So I wanted a garden I could really enjoy that was interesting with lots of textures and colors, but I didn't have to spend a lot of time maintaining it. And I can find a lot of interest through colors and textures in plants where I don't have to have a lot that flowers, because in general, things that flower tend to take more water. And now succulents do flower, but they're grown more for their foliages. So
yeah, we have some succulents on our back deck. My wife picked up some chicks and hens.
Yes, that's a common one. It's very sturdy.
It was a surprise. I was like, what's that? What's it doing? It just kind of wandered into our yard from the garden center.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Goodness, because you're up in Canada, aren't you?
Yeah, so my zone's similar, say, Detroit or Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
Right on Lake Erie, so we get some lake effect.
Right.
That's why I asked about the drought. We get a lot of U.S. television, and we've had one of the rainiest Julys. Last year, they were always talking about this polar vortex in the Midwest, and we got killer frost and killer snow.
I've heard that. It snowed and it was very cold, too.
It has carried into our summer. So anywhere that had ridiculous snow last winter has had crazy rain this year, and you've had none.
We've had none. We had 4.1 inches of rain all last year. And in January, it was the warmest January I can remember. We had probably 10 days that were over 80 degrees. Wow. So we've been warm, too. Our summer has been warm, too. So besides that, besides the drought, it's been warm. So the trees are starting to show a little stress. I was just over in the Santa Ynez Valley about a week or two ago, and it is so dry up there. Even the oaks are starting to brown.
Yikes.
So hopefully we're going to get some rain this year.
Nell, we have a lot of listeners who live in major cities in apartments, and their gardens are little containers on their patio.
Yes, exactly.
You have a book called Keep Your Houseplants Alive. I told my wife, she said, brilliant title.
Thank you.
Because, I'm telling people, hey, I'm into this gardening thing. And they go, oh, yeah, I kill everything I touch.
Exactly.
So your book there's a huge, huge potential out there of people who think they cannot garden. Can you talk to us a little bit about your book, how it came about, and what kind of reception it's had?
Well, I've just started to write books. This is my second book. So the book just came out around July 4th. So it's brand new. And it's also not big houseplant season now because it's August. A lot of people are outside. It's before people go back to school. So we're going to really start to do a big promotion on, a bigger promotion on it in the fall. But the good thing about books is they're there. So they sell every month, all year long. But I wanted to do a book that was appealing to everyone because everyone may not have a garden, but they have a home. And a lot of people love houseplants. Even though I've got a garden full of plants, I still have houseplants too because I like to have greenery inside. So this is my practical experience. I was an interior scaper. I started my horticultural career after college as an interior scaper, meaning I maintained plants in interior environments, and then I switched into the design aspect of it. And interior gardening has not changed all that much. There are some new plants, but there really aren't that many. Whereas exterior plants are much more varied. A lot of new introductions, a lot of different plants come on the market, but interior plants have pretty much stayed the same. So I just wanted to share my practical experience, because I think sometimes you're thrown so much information in so many technical terms you don't understand it. So I just wanted to write it simple. It has a lot of tips. It's got a lot of great pictures in it, so people can easily identify plants. And I also only did the 25 or the 27 plants which held up the best in commercial environments, which means they'll be the strongest in your homes.
You made me remember something from my childhood, Nell.
Yeah, what's that?
My grandmother, in the early 70s, had a plant that none of us were allowed to touch. It was called an African violet.
Oh, yes. My grandmother had African violets, too. Yes.
And I know now it's not that, I don't know if in vogue is the word, but I guess there are trends in interior scaping like anything else, right?
Yes, for sure. And it's like exterior plants come and go. But African violets are, and there's so many new varieties now. There's ones that have variegated foliage even.
Nice.
And there's ones that have tiny, they're miniatures, so you can get these little tiny flowers and these little tiny leaves on them, and they're just adorable. They're almost like a tiny little teacup African violet.
When you were describing working outside and your philosophy of low maintenance, that must be extremely appealing to clients.
Yes, it was. I didn't have a lot of low maintenance gardens. Well, when I was a professional gardener, I was a professional gardener in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I was taking care of a lot of big gardens with a lot of color displays. I worked with annual color a lot of different plants. And so that wasn't really low maintenance. That's why I wanted my garden to be low maintenance, because I worked a lot. I probably worked like 6 days a week.
Oh, yeah. Did you ever have any clients that were like completely over the top?
I did. And I still kept one client. I go up about twice a year, and she has to have, although she has backed off this year because of the water, but everything has to flower. She has to have a lot of color in her garden, and she just doesn't care. She just doesn't care what she spends. She loves her garden.
Fantastic.
So
some people, and that's a perfect lead into this question, is some people garden just for fresh flowers or herbs or vegetables, but for some people, it's way deeper, emotional. What is gardening like for you after such a long and varied career?
Well, for me now, my business is internet-based, so I work out of my shed. I'm talking to you in my shed right now.
Nice.
And so I walk down the driveway. I have a very, very hard commute to work. And so I pass my garden. I'm in my garden all the time. The shed looks out at the backyard. I pass the side yard. I see the front yard out of my rear windows in the house. And it's just, for me, it's just a sense of peace almost. And I'm very connected to the earth. I love being outdoors. I could never have a job indoors. I've got the shed door closed now in case there's any noise, but I always have the door open. I've got hummingbirds whiz by all the time. So for me, it's just being connected to the earth, and I like to see things grow, and I like to see how I can shape things, because I'm always moving things around in my garden and doing different things.
Yeah, a gardener should never be bored, right? If they're bored,
No.
They just need to take action.
Yes. And there's so many new plants coming on the market all the time. There's some beautiful new introductions coming for 2015. So if anybody is bored in their garden, it's because they're not using a lot of plants.
Ooh, I'd be remiss if I didn't go deeper on this question. Talk to us a little bit about what you see coming down the road that'll be popular or controversial, or what's maybe slipping out of favor.
Well, I think from what I've been hearing, pansies are slipping out of favor, although I really like them. But this is just what I hear, I see on websites and things. I garden in such a different area that I'm oftentimes not up on trends, but there are some beautiful new heucheras coming. I love heucheras, although I don't grow any just because of their beautiful foliage. And I love hostas too. Again, I can't grow them, but there is an Echinacea rudbeckia cross that's going to be new for 2015, and that's kind of exciting to me.
I wonder if that's going to have herbal properties or be used for other purposes other
I'm
than...
not quite sure. I know that they're doing it so it can be strong like the Echinacea, but the rudbeckia can sometimes mildew out, but it's got those beautiful flowers, so that's the cross they've got going on. So I don't know actually, because I haven't actually researched. I just read it was coming on down the line. So I pay more attention to succulents and bromeliads because those are my passion.
My wife's nodding and smiling when you said hostas because she's a big fan.
I love hostas. Oh, I do. I just love the foliage on them. I love coleus too. That was one plant that went out of favor in probably the 80s or the 90s, but it's come back strong. And there are some beautiful foliages. I've got a coleus that's 5 years old now.
Well, okay, here, let's transition to this, because what is your garden like personally this season? What is making you happy, and is there anything frustrating you?
Frustrating me might be the water situation, but it's pretty drought tolerant, so I've cut back on the water. I water for a longer period of time, but I water less often. Mm-hmm. So it would probably be the water is the most frustrating, or the lack thereof, shall we say, would probably be the most frustrating thing, because I have reworked pretty much all the plants in my garden to where I want them to be. So there's nothing that really frustrates me, but there are a lot of butterflies around this year, so that makes me happy.
I was going to ask you about pollinators, because the bee conversation is always in the news.
There are a lot of them around, so I'm very happy to see them, and a lot of them are flying in pairs too.
Good.
We just kind of fun to see them flying together. But plant-wise, I really haven't done anything new because I didn't want to do a lot of planting, or I didn't want to extensively prune this year either, because it's not good to prune a plant in a drought because the plant could be stressed. Mm-hmm. And I've got an avocado that is probably like 4 years old, and it's starting to flower. So hopefully it's going to fruit this year.
How long have you been growing him?
For 4 years. Wow. And they do take a while to bear fruit.
Yeah. I'm a big avocado fan, but it's just not feasible where I live.
I love them. And I don't grow a lot of food. I've got an herb garden. I don't grow food because I grew up on a farm, and we just had so much to do and to can and to do all that. And I also live someplace where there's a farmer's market all year round, 6 days a week. So I don't need to. I like to support the farmers. Mm-hmm. So I've got, in terms of food, I've got a lemon tree, I've got a lime tree, I've got an orange tree, and I've got an avocado tree. And I've got my herbs.
Nice.
So that is what I grow all year long.
I had a conversation recently with a friend who's big into herb gardening, because 150 years ago, that was your hospital was your herb garden.
Yes, exactly.
It's so expensive to get sick in North America now. I
know. That's why I've been a vegetarian for 40 years now. And I don't take a single drug, and I'm strong as can be. So I think it's good to have a plant-based diet. And if there's one thing that I could recommend, if people could grow more food, because I think we eat too much processed food in this country.
Oh, I know.
I know we do. I know we eat a lot of processed food, and we drink drinks that have a lot of crap in them. So, I mean, if you just eat good food, I spend the bulk of my money at the farmer's market. Mm-hmm. All year long. So I'm fortunate that way, though, that we have things all year long. It's avocado season all year. They sell avocados all year, but it's prime season in the fall, winter, spring. So
a lot of kids believe cheese naturally comes in slices wrapped in plastic.
That's true.
I've never seen a cow.
No, it's true. It's true. And they just don't have any idea where their food comes from, that it actually grows in the earth. It doesn't grow in supermarkets.
Yeah.
So
now, you're what I call an expert gardener. And we have a lot of rookies listening who think, oh, Nell's never killed a plant. Everything she touches just is beautiful and there's no mistakes. But there's always a good connection between listeners and guests when they can admit to blowing something up in the garden. Have you ever had a catastrophic oopsie that you can humorously share?
I'm trying to think. I've pruned some plants too severely, not knowing what they were, but they were perennials, so I haven't had a really big. I wouldn't say a really big oops. I took a peach tree out of my backyard because, it wasn't doing well at all. And it turns out it was full of termites. But I think I've erred on the side of caution because I was a professional gardener and a garden designer for so long. And it's okay to make mistakes in your own garden, but you don't want to make mistakes for anybody else. But I think that I've been gardening so long that it comes as second nature to me. So there are some plants that I will say, there are plants that I have planted that I thought would do a lot better than they did. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I have killed some plants. It hasn't been anything big or huge.
Good.
But I do like to experiment with plants, so I have done that. And oftentimes it's improper pruning, or the plant is the right place, but it's the right plant, but it's in the wrong place.
Nice.
And I think that people don't realize that you've got to make sure the soil is good too, because the soil is the foundation for the plant.
You mentioned experimenting, Nell. Is there anything that you want to give a try out next year in your garden? Any experiments you want to run?
I'd say probably, that's going to depend on our rain. So I would say any succulents or bromeliads that I don't have. Those are my passion, and those are what do well here. So I tend to stick to those, and I don't have any room for any shrubs or anything anymore because I've planted so much. I'm a plant person. Mm-hmm. So I don't have a lot of room. I would say that I've got spearmint and I've got peppermint, and I love mint. So maybe some new mints, some new flavors, because there's so many flavors of mint.
Wow. Now I have a whole new level of respect for you, because mint is a 4-letter word in our house because it just takes over.
Yes. Well, I do mine in pots. I've got my mint in pots because it does travel, yes.
It does travel. Very good.
So I've got 3 big pots of mints. So that keeps them contained. That is what I learned. But I love mint. I flavor my water with mint. I have it in tea. I eat mint every day.
Nice.
I love mint.
Let's take a minute to thank our sponsors and then come back and play 5 quick questions. What's the hottest trend in gardening? I think the hottest trend is aquaponics. Can you really grow a massive garden powered by fish? Find out more and discover the secrets to building fish-powered gardens at www.BackToMyGarden.com/fish. Are you concerned about toxic chemicals, GMOs, and frankenfood? Don't panic, grow organic. Discover my new resource for organic gardening. Go to www.BackToMyGarden.com/myorganic. Our half hour is rapidly flying by, Nell, and now is the time in the show when we get to play everybody's favorite game called 5 Quick Questions.
Okay.
This is your chance to share wisdom and experience with rookie gardeners.
Great.
Are you ready to play?
I am. Bring it on.
Question number 1. In your opinion, what do you think stops most people from trying gardening?
I would say fear or lack of knowledge. I hear a lot, and I think you said this earlier in the podcast, I love plants, but I always kill them.
If you're listening to this podcast and you have a friend with 2 brown thumbs, I cannot highly recommend more a Christmas gift called Keep Your Houseplants Alive by Nell Foster. I think that's a tongue-in-cheek gift when you give that to a loved one. Say, here, read this.
Well, I think that I just wanted a title that really was self-explanatory.
Yeah, it's a brilliant title. It's up on Amazon and your website?
Yes, it is. Cool. And I must say, there are beautiful houseplants out there, houseplant books out there, but this is just a very practical, simple, easy to understand guide.
But that's your second book. You have a first book about Christmas ornaments.
I do. I wanted to do the first one because besides having a gardening business in San Francisco, I also had a commercial for Christmas decorating business. So I decorated huge buildings, huge corporations I had that business for 16 years. So I collected things in nature, and then I made the basis for the ornament, and then I decorated them with air plants. I love air plants too. I decorated them with air plants and succulents.
You know, when I was a kid, my grandparents and parents would never go to a store and buy Christmas ornaments on a credit card. Everything was homemade. Exactly.
And I'm doing another Christmas book now, another Christmas ornament book.
Nice.
And then next year I'm going to do 2 plant books. So I'm kind of going back and forth because I love to decorate for Christmas.
Dynamite. Question 2. Mm-hmm. This might be a loaded question. What is the single best piece of gardening advice that you've ever received?
Oh, this was from my dad, a very practical man. And make hay while the sun shines.
Beautiful. Make hay when the sun shines. That'll be the Twitter quote of the week.
I'll make hay. I think it's actually make hay while the sun shines. I think it's an old New England phrase, I think, because that's where I'm from. But anyway, he always said, because we had a farm and we had to make hay, we had to, the hay always had to be cut and baled. And it was like, oh, we have to go out and do that again. And he's, yep, we have to make hay while the sun shines. And I think that applies to here. It doesn't apply as much because we're dry for a good probably 9 months out of the year. But in so many places where people garden, you've got to garden while, it's a season.
Question 3. Internet's a big place, especially for gardeners. What are 2 websites that you like and would recommend to a novice gardener?
Well, I would, of course, have to say joyousgarden.com. That is my own. I tend to cover a wide variety of topics on there. But I'll give you 2 more. There's one, yougrowgirl.com, and she does food. It's all about growing food, and then there are recipes. So you can learn what to do with that food, and it's a nice mix of both. And then, of course, there's always Dave's Garden, and that's a huge active community of gardeners with lots of answers about any question. Or if you have a question, you can actually post a question on there, too. So I'd say those 2, or those 3. I threw in mine, too, of course.
Yeah, joyousgarden.com. You got to go there. Follow Nell on Twitter at joyousgarden.
I'm on Facebook and Google Plus and Pinterest too, by the way.
Oh, Pinterest, yeah, because you have so many great photos on your
right.
site.
Our blog, our whole business is very much photo based.
That's what I love about gardeners. They're so willing to share and help, and it's quite a community.
I'm doing I'm a garden advisor for ehow.com too, so I answer. Actually, I was doing that just before you called. I was answering questions for people.
Question number 4. For somebody who wants to get into flowers specifically, can you recommend a great book for somebody who's passionate about learning about flower gardening?
Flower gardening. I would probably say the American Horticultural Society has an encyclopedia of gardening, and then they have an encyclopedia of flowers too. So that would probably be my best because that covers the whole country.
Nice.
And where you are, too.
Yeah, the zonal denial will lead to a lot of frustration. Yeah.
Exactly. I use the Sunset Western Garden book a lot, but that applies to, that applies to a big part, the big part of the country.
Hey, we can recommend 2 books. There are no rules in podcasting.
No.
Question number 5. What's the number one thing you believe every rookie gardener should try to grow next season?
My answer will be the same. I think for food, I think it's important to grow food, any fruit or vegetable. That they can even start with an herb garden, because I think it's very important to eat fresh food and to try to nourish yourself with things from the earth, and it's very satisfying to eat the food that you've grown.
I concur.
So I would say that, but that's a practical answer.
What's one for whimsy, fun, or just pure craziness?
I've got to say succulents, because they're so much fun. I think you can combine them with other plants too. And that's a fun thing to do, but they're wonderful in containers, and they make beautiful, beautiful patterns. And they're just really, to me, playing with succulents is like being an artist, because they're so different. A lot of plants are the same. They just, they're just, no foliage, or they have some flowers, but you can get so many colors and so many textures and so many leaf patterns out of succulents that I would say that.
Nice. Good.
But that's my bias. I love succulents, so that's sort of my thing.
That's the wonderful part of gardening, is it's variety.
It is, and it was a challenge for me, because I grew up on the East Coast, and then I went to school in upstate New York, and then I finished in Tucson, and then I went back to Boston, and then I went to New York, and then I went to San Francisco. So I had to learn plants everywhere I was, and that's a challenge. And you have to learn the soils and the climates and the nuances of the garden. So it's been a challenge, but it's been good. I love to learn new things.
Nell, I'm going to send everybody listening to the show over to your main site at www.joyousgarden.com. Dig in. There's so much there.
Please do. And anybody can, if they have any requests for any plants that they want to know about, if they want me to do a blog, or we also have, I forgot to mention our YouTube channel, which is Joyous Garden TV, and we do a lot of videos there. We do a video every week.
JoyousGarden.tv?
It's Joyous Garden. It's a Joyous Garden TV.
Joyous Garden TV. Okay, that'll be easy to find on YouTube.
Right, and you can find it in the menu bar off our website too.
There you go.
All right, so we have all that. So I'm happy to answer anyone's question.
Nell, you've been an amazing guest. I'm actually going to give you the last word. Can you leave our listeners maybe with either a pearl of wisdom or a note of encouragement on their gardening journey?
Well, I think if you're a beginning gardener, just don't get frustrated at first, because plants are alive. Furniture, everything else, art, it's all dead, but it's alive. So you're experimenting with something alive, and oftentimes people overwater things. So I would go easy on the water, and also know where a plant should go before you plant it. And make sure that it's going to be okay in your garden, or okay in your container, or okay in your zone, because so many people just buy the plant they see in, say, a big box store. And it may not be one that is a long-lasting plant, and then people get, oh my God, this plant died. But, that's because it's got a short lifespan. So just really know what the plant is before you plant it.
Dynamite. Nell, thanks for being on Back to My Garden.
Well, it was a pleasure, Dave. Thank you for having me.
Hello, garden lover. It's Dave. All of the links, resources, and websites mentioned in this episode will be posted at www.backtomygarden.com/31. If you enjoyed this episode, please come to the website and click share and help us reach more gardeners. Have an amazing day. Happy gardening.